Welcome to True Crime Boss. I'm Jarrett Ferrantino, and tonight we're talking about the post-plea proceedings and upcoming hearing in the Bryan Kohberger case. Unless you live under a rock, folks, you are aware that Bryan Kohberger has entered a plea of guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder of Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie in Idaho. What's next in this case, and will Bryan Kohberger ever give us a motive, and will he apologize for what he's done to these 4 beautiful people and their families, and quite honestly, to our nation and the world through this crime? The key to understanding the next phase is to appreciate what a victim is under Idaho law. It's not just a term we throw around as lay people. It's actually a term defined under the law, which, if you meet that definition, you have the right to address the court on what's called a victim impact statement. This will be the most emotionally charged and gut-wrenching portion of these proceedings. The victims, for the first time, will be given the opportunity to look Bryan Kohberger in the face in front of the judge and address the court on how this crime has impacted them and what they want the court to do. So how do we define a victim? Under the Idaho Code and Article 1 of the Idaho Constitution, a victim is typically defined as a person directly harmed by the crime, or in a case of death, the victim's spouse, child, parent, or legal representative. The primary right to give a victim impact statement belongs first to the victims. Our victims are killed and voiceless. Now it belongs to their family members. And, as we'll discuss a little later, but possibly their friends. What are the rights of victims? Under Article 1 of the Constitution, a crime victim is defined by the statute we just defined. They're to be treated with fairness, respect, dignity, and privacy throughout the entire criminal justice process. They're entitled to have a timely disposition of the case with no unnecessary delays. They're entitled to prior notice of court, appellate, and parole proceedings, and upon request, information about sentencing, incarceration, or release of the defendant. They have the right to attend all criminal proceedings, including the plea, sentencing, incarceration, or release hearings. They have the right to communicate with the prosecution, including being informed of any proposed plea agreement. There was a hiccup on that right in this case. They have the right to be heard upon request at all proceedings related to pleas, sentencing, and incarceration, and possible release, unless the court deems it would result in a manifest injustice. They have the right to restitution, to be repaid for how they've been financially harmed. They have the right to refuse interviews or contact with the defense, but they certainly can talk to them if they choose to. They have the right to read the pre-sentence report before sentencing. And they have the right to be heard. The constitutional framework we just outlined ensures that victims aren't sidelined. They have a voice through the decision-making process. But their rights complement rather than override prosecutorial authority and judicial discretion. In cases like Bryan Kohberger's, where the emotional impact is broad and sweeping, the victim's circle will be large. Courts will often allow roommates, friends, and coaches of surviving victims. Because, folks, there are no survivors of anybody in the blast zone of this case. There are only surviving victims. And in many respects, there are victims that may never know Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee because of Bryan Kohberger's horrific crime. Here's what to expect at these upcoming proceedings. Certainly, the parents of our victims will be given an opportunity to outline how this has impacted them. They will be given an opportunity to tell Bryan Kohberger in front of the judge what he's taken away, how he's broken their children, destroyed their lives. This will be emotionally draining for everyone. But it's time for Bryan Kohberger to hear their pain, see the wreckage and the carnage that he has caused. What does Bryan Kohberger do at this proceeding? What to expect from the defense in response to this gut-wrenching testimony we are going to hear? You may hear some of the mental health evidence that Kohberger's defense team had lodged throughout these proceedings. We've heard that Bryan Kohberger is level 1 on the autism spectrum, may have Asperger's. Certainly that's something that his defense can put forth. It's not going to change a damn thing in his sentence, but they are obligated to acquaint the court on any factor that may weigh to Kohberger's benefit in determining and fashioning a sentence here. We may hear from Kohberger's family, who asks the court to consider some aspect of Bryan's life. Two major questions remain that I am most often asked about this case. Will we ever know a motive? And will Bryan Kohberger apologize at sentencing? Bryan Kohberger will have the opportunity to apologize, and he should take it. He should take it, and you may all say, what difference does it make? It's important that he tells these loved ones of Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee that he's sorry. And he take this opportunity to apologize. The next question I keep getting is, are we ever going to know a motive? This guy's nuts. That's the motive. He's evil, okay? Most murders, and I've prosecuted many murders, folks, they're over drugs, love, hate, theft, greed. None of that applies here. This is pure evil and a thrill kill. So hearing a motive like that is only another way for Bryan Kohberger to, again, twist the knife in his victims. No motive is worth hearing out of the mouth of Bryan Kohberger. And that's my answer to anyone who asks me, but we didn't hear why. Who cares at this point? As long as he's locked up and the key is thrown away forever, and 3 life sentences plus 10 years after that. That's what I say. So for those of you that have followed this case, I promise, July 23rd at 9 a.m., they've only reserved 1 day for this proceeding. I'm expecting they're going to need an extra day. You're going to hear from the friends and family of Bryan Kohberger. And having done this, folks, it tears everyone apart, even the tough guy prosecutors in the room. And I have to share an anecdote. I've certainly had victims' families screaming and crying in these kinds of proceedings. I've broken down in these kinds of proceedings, having become close to victims' families over the years and gotten to know victims in my cases through them. One time, I did a murder case where a man killed his wife, a mother of 3 children, in front of the children. And after we secured the conviction for first-degree murder, we went to the sentencing phase. And the victim's mom stood in front of the judge and looked the killer in the eye and said, I forgive you. You will have no power over me. I will not let my hate for you control my life. I release that and I forgive you. It was like a forgiveness bomb went off in the courtroom. I was like weak in the knees. I almost went down. Of all the drama and crying and pain I've seen in that courtroom, nothing took the wind out of the sails of a defendant like forgiveness. And I'm not suggesting that we're going to see that here. But I am suggesting that you never know what to expect in these types of proceedings. I've seen Mr. Gonsalves' pain and his position with regard to the plea, and we talked about my thoughts on that. And I hope he takes the opportunity to tell Bryan Kohberger how he feels in front of Bryan Kohberger. Not because I think Kohberger needs to hear it, but because I think Mr. Gonsalves needs to do it in front of Bryan Kohberger as part of his healing process. We'll continue to cover these proceedings, and if anyone gets a chance, I was honored to be part of the Idaho student murders airing right now on Peacock. It's been very well received. It tells the story of Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee, and I was proud and honored to take you through the prosecution in that special. And if you get a chance, check it out, because we really dive deep into this case, how it developed, how Bryan Kohberger was identified, and where we felt the prosecution was going in the event of a trial up and through the plea. Thank you.